because the U.S. China relationship is eroding so much right now in real time. And I mean, again, I know this is not the best time to be hitting the Chinese. It's a time that we need more coordination, but obviously the Chinese do have a lot to answer for.
Sure.
If you were sitting in your old seat at State Department right now, what would you be trying to push specifically on China?
I would want to cool it a little bit publicly, and I would tell the Secretary of State and others that this is the most important relationship the United States has. Let's start doing a little bit of old-fashioned diplomacy, meet with China to talk about some of the ground rules of the relationship, talk about some specific problems such as North Korea. But I would push back against the Chinese in terms of what they're doing in Hong Kong. I don't much like some other things that are going on domestically. I think on trade, which is not the province of the Secretary of State, but we'd obviously have to push back against intellectual property theft. In some areas, we're just going to have to outcompete China. I can't blame China for wanting to become the global leader, say, in certain technologies. But as an American, I would say, why are we not devoting the kind of share of our GDP that we historically did into basic research? We can compete with anybody if we simply put the resources behind it. My goal with China, Ian, would be to come up with a kind of relationship where we could selectively agree, say on a North Korea, possibly on climate, possibly on some global health reform. At the same time, we inevitably compete. I mean, I'm not naive, I'm not starry-eyed. But the goal ought to be to set up a relationship that doesn't just have one personality, essentially that protects areas of limited cooperation against the backdrop of inevitable rivalry. But we want to mute the rivalry. That means we've also got to talk about such things as Taiwan and so forth, but push the Chinese hard where we need to. But one other thing, it shouldn't be only the United States. What we need to do is lay off beating up on the South Koreans and the Japanese and instead work with them. Chinese are much more likely to be responsive if they have to face a united front of Europe, the United States, Australia, Japan, South Korea, what have you. Suddenly then it's 75% or 70% of the world's economy. It's all this might. Let's do that. Again, I think we need to work out a different relationship with China, and we need to influence Chinese behavior. We are not going to succeed if we do it unilaterally or if we go to people and say, you've got to choose between China and us. No, we actually have to invest the time in good old-fashioned diplomacy, do the consulting, and then I think we could work something out, not perfect, but good enough, and it becomes a very different 21st century. If the U.S.-Chinese competition is somewhat muted, and if at least selectively, China works to deal with some regional or global challenges as opposed to either sitting it out or making them worse.